It's ugly, it's vulgar, and it's obscene. Worse, as I see it, this is adult entertainment, pornography, targeting pre-adolescent teens, 12, 13 to 16-year-old junior high and high school students. You can ask any of your 13 or 14-year-olds if they know those artists. And if they know those songs, and they'll tell you they do. Nicki Minaj's album, Queen, features the chart-topping single, Barbie Dreams. As of last month, Kanye's track, I Love It, peaked at #1 on the Billboard charts with over 46 million streams, his biggest hit since 2015. Both raps are delivered in childlike nursery rhyme cadence. And this, my friends, is what false liberty masquerading as personal freedom looks like. A relentless, wicked, unjust, and unholy war is now being waged upon the very souls of our children. Nothing can be more evil, sinful, iniquitous, or devastating than those who, black or white, would knowingly conspire to market this spiritual dog food to our young, our poor, mercilessly exploiting the ignorant, the innocent, and the unlearned for selfish gain, individual and corporate greed. The net result of these unfair and enslaving practices, an entire generation in abject bondage to fashion and debt, disconnected from their historical antecedents in time, immune to insult. Shame on those among us, individuals, corporations, public and private institutions who know better and yet simply choose to look the other way and to think we just buried the Queen of Soul. This is a story about the future. To secure the future, the African American people must accept full responsibility for their great music legacy. All of it. Slave work songs, Negro spirituals, blues, jazz, gospel, soul, R&B, reggae, and hip-hop. No, our culture does not belong to the person or the people with the most money. To the contrary, on matters regarding the progress of our children and cultural sovereignty, the only way we can ever be denied these blessings is if we deny ourselves of our own blessing. Our music is our greatest claim on the American dream. Indeed, through intelligent thought, knowledge, and wisdom, we must do all that we can to resist those who would suppress, obscure, and marginalize our community's immense contribution to popular culture and world progress. Together, we must resolve to move the people forward. It is therefore our God-given sacred right, our patriotic duty to this country to preserve, protect, and promote our very best. Again, the progress of our children and the integrity of our African American culture, values, and traditions, our collective soul, mean everything. My friends, the future of black music in America is the issue of our times. The enemies of progress will not prevail over the people of God. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Now, I conclude with our Great Watch Night initiative. In January 2019, will mark 6 years since the observation of the 150th anniversary of the emancipation of the Great Emancipation of 1863. Think about what life was like in America 150 years ago. In 1868, the Reconstruction period in the South was at its height in the wake of the Civil War to end slavery. A war that cost over 700,000 American lives. From those perilous times to the present, we are blessed with an enormous opportunity to measure and define our American story, our collective claim on the American dream, to proclaim for ourselves a new song, a new language of freedom, and as always and forevermore, positive music matters. If you read the latest issue editorial in the magazine, the issue with Janet Jackson on the cover, you'll see what the Great Watch Night initiative is all about. We did this in 2013. We had over 200 churches throughout the region participate. The Empire, the Reverend Grant, President Grant was with us. The Empire, the United Missionary Baptist Association was in with it, and New Jersey at that time it was called, no, it was even before that, it was Paradise, it was Reverend Aaron, and then in New Jersey we had the General Baptist, we had the AME Church, we had the Church of God in Christ. At 12 o'clock, 3 things happened, which was historical. After midnight, it began with the prayers, of course. A young person got up. Did everybody get this? Does everybody have this?
No.
We said that we were going to distribute it to everybody. Please, let everybody have a copy of this, please. Okay. But in any case, what we did is that we created what we call the African American cultural narrative. And we had a young person from each congregation to read what I'm about to read to you. We have actually condensed our history and our story in this country to, Pastor, 281 words. Tells the story. So I'm going to conclude by sharing with you, and actually my 10-year-old grandson has memorized this. The future, dear friends, the future is to make sure we have to teach our children. Make sure they know who they are, and they know whose they are. So here is the African American cultural narrative. African Americans are a unique people with a peculiar history in this land. Brought to these shores in chains from Africa in the early 1600s, our people toiled and suffered as captives in brutal bondage for a quarter of a millennium. That's 250 years. On January 1st, 1863, 2 years into the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation signed by Abraham Lincoln became law, signaling an end to slavery. On that day, the African American community of the United States of America was born. 100 years later, in August 1963, at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood in front of the Lincoln Memorial as he led hundreds of thousands to a march on Washington, seeking an end to discrimination and 90 years of Jim Crow segregation in the South. It was a demand for full and equal citizen rights for the people in what has been called the Second Emancipation. 40 years after Martin Luther King's tragic assassination in 1968, America elects its first black president, the Honorable Barack Obama. In the 100 years between the first and the second emancipation, in the midst of bitter persecution, humiliation, lynching, enduring the denial of basic civil rights, the resiliency of the African American spirit continued to shine brightly in religion, business, education, medicine, invention, sports, and the creative arts, music, fashion, dance, language, literature, and theater. Indeed, original American art forms, and a popular culture which has become the envy of the world were founded upon the souls of a forlorn people. And that is our story, the truth, beauty, and goodness of a loving and gifted race revealed. Ours is an extraordinary history of trial, tribulation, and triumph that we must never, ever forget. This is the story we must tell our children and ever be remembered for all future generations. We, the people, descendants of the Great Emancipation, must tell our story and sing our greatest songs to each other and the entire world. We must remind ourselves over and over again of the noble struggle, human dignity, sacrifices, and wisdom of our torch-bearing forefathers, our goodly heritage, our divine inheritance, and our great musical legacy. This is our story, the cultural narrative, a new language of freedom, a springboard toward a great and prosperous future, a spiritually enlightened ideal, a vision of hope, opportunity and progress, liberty and happiness, health and wholeness, peace and goodwill. And so we end by just saying, we've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in his holy word. He hasn't failed me yet. Whoa, whoa, whoa.